But thank you all again so much for being here. My name is Emily Denoncourt. I'm joined by my colleague Katie Chu. We're here representing the admission office. I've been with the Landmark admission office for 16 years, and I've also been a part of the Landmark community for my whole life because both of my parents have worked at Landmark since before I was born. And it's just a wonderful community to be a part of, both personally and professionally. We have a lot to cover today, so I am going to jump in and start sharing my screen with you so we can get right to the presentation. So just give me a moment as I switch over my screen. Hopefully you'll see the presentation showing up in just a moment. How does that look?
Very nice, Emily, yeah. If for some reason the presentation isn't taking up the entirety of your screen, if you scroll to the middle of the slide, you'll see a question icon, and that allows you to pin it so that you'll see just the presentation. Again, at any point, feel free to throw a question in the chat bar, and we'll make sure that we get to it at around 9:30 once we switch over to that Q&A. And thank you at this point for keeping your microphones muted. You do that again by scrolling to the bottom of the screen and using that microphone button. And I'll turn it back over to Emily and we'll get started.
Thank you, Katie. So I want to begin the presentation, first of all, by acknowledging the unusual school year that we all are experiencing right now. So Landmark's elementary middle school started the year in early September in a hybrid model, and we have been able to maintain a consistent model since that time. The students and faculty were divided into two different groups, half and half. And each pod is alternating one full week of in-person on-campus learning and then one full week of remote learning. And this allows us to only have half of the number of people on campus that we typically would, which really helps us to meet all of the health and safety protocols that are in place. But beyond those protocols, things like face coverings and physical distancing and hand sanitizing and traffic patterns in the buildings, beyond all those things, there's so much about what makes Landmark Landmark that remains the same. Things like our well-defined student profile, the engaging and interactive instruction, a highly individualized curriculum with daily literacy remediation, and an incredibly dedicated and innovative faculty. So these are the things that make Landmark Landmark. They represent the values and the priorities of Landmark as an institution, and so they'll be the focus of our presentation today. Landmark was founded in 1971 by a man named Dr. Charles Drake. Dr. Drake was a diagnostician as well as an educator, and he himself was dyslexic. He grew up struggling with his own reading and writing skills, and by the time he reached early adulthood, he had put significant effort into trying to teach himself how to read. And this effort involved breaking down the task of reading into its smallest possible parts and then working to master each of those parts step by step. Not only did this effort give him firsthand knowledge of what those underlying skills are that allow our minds to sound out words and read sentences fluently and automatically, but it also allowed him to create small, manageable goals for himself. And as he accomplished each goal, he noticed that each experience of success, no matter how small, provided a powerful boost to his motivation and his confidence. And experiencing that for himself, he recognized just how important those small successes would be to any struggling learner. So Dr. Drake's experience supporting his own literacy development went on to inform the foundational teaching principles that we still use to this day. Landmark School educates bright students with language-based learning disabilities using a diagnostic prescriptive model, meaning that we are constantly diagnosing or updating our understanding of our students' current needs and their progress towards their goals, and then prescribing the right methodologies, meeting them where they are, providing explicit instruction, identifying and breaking down the underlying skills needed to read and write, and by micro-uniting instruction, which means breaking down skills, information, and assignments into small, manageable chunks, creating attainable goals, which is how we provide many opportunities for our students to experience academic success. This naturally increases their motivation and helps our students to reinvest in and re-engage with their own learning. So back in 1971, we opened our doors to about 40 students. This year, we opened the school year with over 435 students enrolled on 2 separate campuses. The presentation today focuses on our elementary middle school, a day school in Manchester, Massachusetts, serving students in grades 2 through 8. The current enrollment this year is 165 students, and that's made up of an elementary program of 50 students in grades 2 through 5, and a middle school program of 115 students in grades 6, 7, and 8. We also have a separate high school campus located 3 miles away that has a day program as well as a boarding program. So who are the students who attend Landmark? Landmark students are bright. They are creative, curious thinkers, good problem solvers with unique ideas and the ability to make interesting connections between their ideas, between the things that they've learned about and their own life experiences. Landmark students are also well-adjusted, which means that they generally get along well with peers and adults. They have good social awareness, strong emotional intelligence. They're generally able to manage their day-to-day experiences and the typical stressors that go along with being a kid these days. Having said that, certainly some Landmark students are dealing with some school-related anxiety or lowered self-esteem related to their previous school experiences. But they do have the emotional readiness and resilience and motivation to face their challenges and really work on the skills that are hardest for them once they're in a learning environment with teachers who really care about their needs and understand how they learn and are meeting them where they are. Landmark students may also struggle somewhat with attention and focus, but they're able to respond well to redirection and are generally able to regulate their attention to a degree that's not distracting to others. And finally, all Landmark students are diagnosed with a language-based learning disability. This is an umbrella term that encompasses a number of terms or diagnoses you may have heard. It includes the IEP category of specific learning disability in reading or in writing. In terms of diagnoses you may see on a neuropsychological evaluation, it includes specific learning disability, specific learning disorder with impairment in reading, also known as dyslexia, or specific learning disorder with impairment in writing, also known as dysgraphia. It can also encompass a realm of diagnosis referred to as a language disorder. And in particular, when talking about language disorders, it's important to note that Landmark's curriculum is designed to support a profile that is stronger in higher order receptive language, understanding and comprehending language, and is weaker in the area of expressive language. And we'll talk more about that receptive strength in just a moment and about how we support the expressive skill development. This next part of the presentation gets into the cognitive profile of our students, and these terms are related to a type of cognitive test called the WISC, the Wechsler Intelligence Scale for Children. This is an assessment that we require as part of our admission process. It's typically done as part of a psychoed evaluation done by a school district or as part of a private neuropsychological evaluation. And so we're breaking it down here into the areas of strength and the areas that are a bit more difficult for our students. So up top here, you see these terms: verbal comprehension, visual spatial perception and organization, fluid reasoning. These are higher order areas of cognition that are strengths for our students. We see scores typically in the average to above average and sometimes superior range. Verbal comprehension refers to that strong conceptual understanding of the world around them. So I mentioned before that our students have wonderful and unique ideas and the ability to make connections, categorize and associate their ideas. So perhaps your child loves stories and you hear them connecting something they heard in a story or saw in a movie to an experience in their own life. Or maybe they love the concepts they're learning in a nature science unit, and you go on a hike with them and you hear them connect something they see on the hike to something they learned in science. So that higher order concept formation and connection making is a real strength for our students. Visual spatial perception and organization is the ability to perceive spatial relationships and work your way through visual information. So hands-on activities like building with Legos or woodworking or sculpting with clay or building a fort are great examples of activities that use visual spatial perception. Envisioning something in their minds and then being able to build or create or put the pieces together to create that vision. And fluid reasoning refers to problem solving and logical thinking ability, the ability to generalize information from a specific context to a larger context, or the ability to recognize a pattern. So to be able to say, this is happening for this reason and be able to predict what comes next. This area is also tied to math reasoning and understanding number concepts, referred to as quantitative reasoning. So the areas of difficulty that we see showing up on a test like the WISC fall under the categories of working memory and processing speed. And so these scores that we see in the different subtests that we look at typically are falling in the low average or just below average range for our students. And working memory refers to the ability to hold on to information in the forefront of our minds and be able to work with that information in the moment. We see scores and abilities related to both visual memory and auditory memory. So when it comes to language and language processing, a struggle with visual working memory can represent a struggle to hold on to words when copying information from the board, or just holding on to common spelling rules and spelling patterns. Auditorily, this could be a struggle with holding on to spoken language or holding on to the sounds and phonemes of language long enough to be able to manipulate them, which has an impact on acquiring reading and writing and spelling skills. The term processing speed here, in this context, we're talking about the brain's ability to recognize visual symbols and automatically make a connection between a symbol and what it represents. So this can involve scanning a row of symbols and quickly recognizing which are the same, which are different, or it can involve forming and quickly retrieving new connections. For example, we all may know that a red octagon means stop, but how quickly are we retrieving and processing that information in the moment? We understand that that's a developmental skill that can take slightly longer for students as they're developing that processing speed and that visual symbol connection making ability. And this all, of course, has a huge impact on language, on recognizing and processing spelling patterns, words, clauses, phrases. And another term that I just want to add in here is the term rapid naming, because those are scores that you may also see on your child's testing, and rapid naming is very much related to that automatic ability to recognize a symbol and what it represents. And so that those scores you may see as an area of struggle for your child as well, very much connected to foundational reading and writing skills. So now we'll jump into the details of our curriculum here at Landmark. So Landmark's curriculum is skills-based, which means that we are really emphasizing the remediation of reading and writing skills throughout our curriculum here. Having said that, we are approved by the Massachusetts State Department, and so by the Department of Education. And so our curriculum parallels the curriculum frameworks, and we're using those frameworks at each grade level or each group of grade levels to facilitate the literacy and language skill development that is the focus of our program. One of the ways that we do this is by grouping students in classes based on skill level. and aspects of their learning profile. And we take grade and age into account as secondary factors. So we're typically grouping students one grade up or down, so you wouldn't see a second grader in class with a fifth grader. It would typically be a grouping of, second or third graders together, or a grouping of seventh or eighth graders together. And finally, all of our classes are considered to be language-based classrooms. So these are all classrooms that are really focusing on the skill building involved in the 4 areas of literacy: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And those class groupings that we talked about are very small in size. Keeping that class size low allows for that interactive, direct instruction that is so fundamental to how we teach. So the elementary class size would typically be between 4 and 7 students. The middle school class size could go up to 8 students, so average of 6 to 8 students in a class. Landmark's faculty is also a highly trained and dedicated group of teachers with a low student-teacher ratio. So there's 3 students for every 1 faculty member on campus. And Landmark is also a teacher training program. So when teachers come to us, if they do not yet have their master's degree in mild to moderate special needs, they are immediately enrolled in a master's degree program with professors that come onto our campus and work with them specifically. And so 78% of our teachers currently have their master's in mild to moderate special needs. The rest of them are working towards that master's. Another unique feature of Landmark and the faculty here is the role of the academic advisor. The academic advisor carefully oversees student schedules here, thinking about class placement and level of challenge. They also work very closely with the one-on-one tutor that a student has, and we're going to talk more in detail about the tutorial class that each student at Landmark has. But they're working with that tutor to monitor and update each student's diagnostic goals, think about the methodologies that would be appropriate to bring into the tutorial, making sure that we're constantly meeting students where they are and helping them work towards their goals in that diagnostic prescriptive model. And then the academic advisor is also the main contact for parents. And so they are the liaison between you and all of the teachers that your child has. They can really help facilitate that communication to get questions answered from teachers, get updates on progress in classes. So every student at Landmark's elementary middle school has the following classes in their daily schedule. And what I want to explain here is this schedule includes the core classes that are typical in any program. That would be language arts, math, science, and social studies. But here at Landmark, because we're emphasizing the development of literacy skills, we are spreading that literacy skill development work over 3 different periods of the day. So those first 3 classes that you see listed here are all working on language arts, reading and writing skill building. There's the tutorial class that is the one-on-one class focusing on the greatest area of need, on your child's specific goals that we've identified by looking at all of the information and doing our own screening. Then there's the language arts class that we will talk more about in just a moment that focuses heavily on the writing process. Then there's the oral expression literature class focusing on speaking skills, using literature and stories to facilitate that work. And then the core curriculum rounded out by math, science, and social studies and complemented by some fun periods where we have an elective period alternating with gym. Students would be able to choose from a list of electives that we'll talk about in a bit. And then elementary students have a class called enrichment, and that class Typically, it refers to a time built into their schedule for fun project-based activities or discussions, perhaps a craft project relating to a theme from science or social studies unit, discussion of an important topic like building and maintaining friendships. So that's enrichment for the elementary students. So the hallmark of a landmark education is a class period that's built into each student's daily schedule that is called the one-on-one tutorial. This is a class that provides intensive remediation of literacy skills. And again, this is a class where the diagnostic goals for each student are so individualized based on all of the information that we collect during the admission process, a screening that we do, and then being able to really constantly update our understanding of their current needs and skill levels through formal and informal assessment and observation while they're here. So this addresses a continuum of literacy skills. This includes skills like phonemic awareness, decoding, linguistic patterns, fluency, higher order reading comprehension strategies, spelling patterns and expectations, and then different aspects of higher order written composition. We use an individualized curriculum here at Landmark, so it is important to note that we're not a school that would be referred to as, for example, an Orton Gillingham school. We're not using just one methodology, one reading program to help provide this intensive remediation. We're drawing from a number of different programs that are out there, constantly looking at research-based programs to continue to incorporate methodologies into these tutorials. So this is just a short list of the many different programs and resources that we draw from, but it includes the Lindemood Bell Lips program, focusing on phonemic awareness and phonological processing, Let's Read, which focuses on those linguistic patterns and phonics development, Merrill linguistic readers. For fluency, programs like Read Naturally and Great Leaps, as well as materials authored by Landmark faculty. Over the 50 years that we've been a school, our faculty members have created their own materials and worked collaboratively and shared those materials. And so there's a lot of faculty authored materials being used as well. So another class that every student at Landmark has is a class called Language Arts, and the heavy focus of our language arts classes is on written expression. It's a highly structured approach. We use thematic units, things like exploring Antarctica, like Shackleton's Adventures in Antarctica, or the history of the Hershey Candy Company. So these thematic units provide a shared content and shared vocabulary to be able to help our students to have that content that they need to generate for their writing assignments and their writing work. We're using a significant amount of graphic organizers at the sentence level, at the paragraph level, and eventually at the multi-paragraph essay level. But I really want to emphasize the focus that we place on sentence writing. So many of our students come to us without automaticity in this foundational skill of sentence development. And our focus on sentence writing really allows us to delve into the heart of language functioning. So for at least the first half of the school year, sentence writing is a major focus of the in-class time period. Students are collaboratively writing sentences together. They're analyzing and diagramming the basic requirements of simple sentences, and then learning about parts of speech, how words function, how clauses and phrases function, and slowly adding in elaboration step by step, learning how to make their sentences and eventually all of their writing as clear and powerful as they want it to be. I also want to talk about our use of cursive, because Landmark as an institution believes strongly in continuing to directly teach cursive to our students. And we do this in the language arts class as well as in the tutorial classes. We typically introduce cursive to every student at the elementary middle school level, even new 8th graders coming in who have really not had much exposure to cursive. We will at least try to introduce it somewhat in the tutorial for those students. But for all students at the elementary and 6th and 7th grade levels, cursive is a major focus of how we teach writing. Research shows that cursive writing in particular really activates the language and memory pathways in the brain, more so than typing and even more so than printing. And so that physical act of writing in cursive not only does the fluid motion help to reinforce the chunking of words and to help minimize reversals, but it's so important in terms of what it does for the language processing pathways in the brain, strengthening those pathways and activating the parts of the brain associated with language and memory. And so in addition to developing our students' expressive language skills in terms of writing, we also want to be developing those expressive language pathways associated with speaking skills. And so we have a class at Landmark for every student called Oral Expression Literature. And this class is using stories and literature to facilitate discussion topics and specific skill development. The oral language skills that we are working on encompass skills like narrative sequencing, so learning how to sequence the elements in a story or the elements in a personal experience that you've had, comparing and contrasting information, explaining a process or a procedure, or sharing an opinion appropriately, and learning some of the social language pragmatics involved in terms of higher order, just sharing information appropriately and learning how to interpret what someone else is saying and make sure that you're being interpreted appropriately. And some of the basics in terms of eye contact and tone of voice and body language as well. So all of that is incorporated into our oral expression classes. So math at Landmark is a really extremely tactile, so hands-on, kinesthetic in curriculum, which means that it involves full body movement and a highly visual mode of instruction as well. We're emphasizing big picture thinking in our math classes because that's an area of strength for our students. And so when we introduce a concept in our math curriculum, we're introducing the big picture concept first and then going back to fill in the specific details and steps. And it also involves explicitly practicing the language of math. I'll give a few examples of our math curriculum. First, at the elementary level, for example, students might be working on a subtraction problem using laminated cards with dots on each card representing different numbers. And these would be dots that you would see in formation like you would see on dice. So during a lesson, they could use these cards with 1 dot up through 5 dots. And let's say that each student had the opportunity to select 2 cards, and the class would then work together to figure out what those 2 cards added up to. They would lay the cards on the ground and then take one away while practicing the language of what they were doing out loud. So if they chose 4 and 5, they would say 9 minus 4 equals 5, while physically removing the 4 dot icon card, kinesthetically reinforcing that concept that subtraction means take away, as they're physically taking away that card. An example of a middle school lesson that I observed involved teaching the equation for slope using a huge grid. This is a structure that we have on campus. It's a huge grid made of rope with an X and a Y axis, and it takes up an entire wall. So the vertical ropes on the grid are actually pulleys that students can use to hoist colorful flags up to plot points on the grid. And students have the opportunity to plug a number into the equation for slope, calculate the point, and then count over and up to the appropriate flag and hoist it into the right point. Once all the students have taken a turn, they can see that their flags all line up in a sloping line that shows the shape of the equation that they're working with. And for me, one of the things that was striking in observing a lesson like this, I remember using a graphing calculator in school where I would just plug an equation in and hit enter and see the image show up on my screen without having an organic connection to where that image was really coming from. And here, I could really see that students were connecting the concept of this equation with the image that they were actually creating themselves by hoisting these flags up. So that use of their strong connection making and concept formation was there with that very step-by-step, highly visual kinesthetic approach. So that's our math curriculum. When it comes to technology at Landmark, I've mentioned before just how much our curriculum places a heavy emphasis on developing our students' reading and writing skill mechanics. And so we really want to be maximizing the opportunities that our students have to forge and strengthen those language storage and language retrieval pathways in the brain. And so our use of technology reflects that priority, that emphasis. We use technology as an educational tool, but we don't want to be using it to bypass the reading and writing skill development that is so vital and so important for our students to be doing during this time that we have them enrolled here. So we're using technology like Google Classroom, helping our students learn to access and organize a digital classroom interface and organize their materials. This year, we're using Google Meet, the format that we're using today, as our platform for our remote learning. And we also have a digital citizenship curriculum. It takes different forms at different grade levels, but it encompasses skills like password creation and safety, email etiquette and expectations, sharing information online appropriately, identifying reliable sources, and I think especially important right now, media balance and well-being. So in addition to our academic classes and the rigor of our curriculum that we've just discussed, we also have fun classes that we call elective classes here at Landmark. Every student has an elective period built into their day, and it alternates with their phys ed class, their gym class. So every single student will have a gym class in their schedule every other day. On the days when they don't have gym, they will have chosen from one of these options. We have visual and digital art classes, practical arts like woodworking and small engine repair, and a practical arts class that combines the two, where students are making vehicles and learning how to power them. We have a class called Kids Around the Globe, where students are learning about kids living in other countries, learning about profiles of specific students that have done amazing things, also just learning about different cultures, different lifestyles, and also designing community service projects to connect with and to support students in other countries. We have a music elective where students can learn different instruments. They can learn piano, guitar, bass, ukulele, and drums. And we have a bike repair elective as well. So students are learning to repair bikes and getting to do a little bit of trail maintenance as well as part of that elective. The daily schedule here represents the typical daily schedule that we have. And the schedule this year, there's a note here that just mentions this year's schedule is a little bit different because of the hybrid model that we're in. But typically, our school day begins at 7:45 in the morning with a 15-minute morning meeting, the entire school meeting together, where attendance is taken, announcements are made, and they might do a brief enrichment activity, maybe listening to a piece of music and talking about it. And then by 8 o'clock, everyone is heading off to their first period of the day. There are 8 periods. So that schedule that we had looked at of the typical classes earlier, the 8 periods consist of the tutorial, the language arts class, the oral expression class, and then the math, science, and social studies classes. So those are the 6 academic periods, plus a lunch period and an elective period. These are 47-minute classes with a 30-minute time frame for lunch and 5 minutes between classes. And there's also typically a 25-minute break between the second and third period of the day. That's a snack time and recess time. And then on Monday through Thursday, we offer after-school activities from 3:15 to 4:30. After-school clubs have included things like the art room being open where students can have ongoing projects working at their own pace, a club where they're learning different arts and crafts activities, for example, jewelry making or card making, a bike club utilizing the trails that we have around campus and learning some bike repair skills. Cheerleading, we've had a group of students doing cheerleading for some of our sports teams. The community action team, which does an incredible range of community service activities throughout the year. Drama club, which has taken different forms over the years, but students are learning skills related to character development and scene development, sometimes improv acting skills, and working towards some type of a production. Sometimes we've done an in-person performance, and sometimes it's been a videotaped recorded performance. The library is also open after school for students to get homework done. At the elementary level, we've had Lego building clubs. The middle school students have the option of doing a model boat building program in our woodworking shop. And then the woodworking shop is also open to everyone to have ongoing projects available for after school. We also have an after-school sports program, and that sports program has included basketball, cross country, soccer, baseball, and track. And our 8th graders are able to try out for teams at the high school campus, and those sports include lacrosse, golf, tennis, and wrestling. Homework is a really important topic at Landmark, and we have a particular philosophy towards homework. Homework is always meant to be a practice and review of skills and content taught in the classroom. And so our teachers are really viewing homework as reinforcement of daily lessons and also as feedback for themselves to really make sure that the information that they've taught has been taught to the point where students are able to approach it and complete it independently. That is oftentimes a huge difference in the homework experience that we hear about compared to past experiences. It's really meant to be an independent experience, being able to complete those homework assignments, to have that feeling of confidence and ownership. And we carefully structure that and work towards that, but the idea is that they should be able to complete their homework without parents' help. And finally, I want to wrap up the presentation today with a discussion of our summer program. Landmark's summer program is a wonderful opportunity to boost skills during this 5-week program. And for this coming summer 2021, we are currently planning for an in-person program offering 3 academic classes. I'll talk about those classes in just a moment. What's also listed on this slide are afternoon programs that we've offered in the past. We're still discussing whether or not we'll be able to offer afternoon activity programs this coming summer. We'll certainly keep all applying families up to date about that. But our plan right now is to offer an academic program that will be in person for 5 weeks. It's also important to note that our summer program is the same general learning profile and curriculum, much of the same teaching faculty that are here for the school year program. So it's the same basic application process for the summer program. It also can function as a standalone program. So we have some students that come to Landmark just for those 5 weeks, just for the summer program, and then go back to the school that they were attending before. We also have some students using the summer program as a transition into the school year because there's such consistency between the summer classes and the teaching faculty, and the fact that it's an opportunity to get used to the campus and learn your way around. So some students are using it as a transition. So the 3 classes offered are classes that we've already talked a bit about that are offered in Microcosm over the summer. The one-on-one tutorial class is really focusing on the individual areas of literacy remediation that each student needs to be working towards. And so we're creating the diagnostic goals for that one-on-one tutorial very similarly to how we would for the school year, looking at all of the testing that you've had done, doing a little bit of screening ourselves, and then updating that information with some informal assessment and observation throughout the program. And we also offer the language arts class over the summer, so that's that heavy focus on the writing process. We offer a class called Language Structure and Literature, which involves delving into the structure of language at the word and sentence level, and also using short stories and especially poetry to facilitate some oral expression work and language processing work. So those are the 3 classes that we offer over the summer. And then if we're able to offer afternoon activity programs, these are some examples of programs that have been offered in the afternoon. 12:30 to 3:30 is the typical time frame after lunch. And we've offered a program called Explorations, which combines marine science program. Students are going snorkeling every afternoon and going kayaking 1 day a week, exploring the different coastal locations around Landmark, really learning about the marine biology in the area, doing some experiments. And that also, the Explorations program combines half of the time on marine science and then half of the time on an adventure ropes activity. So we have a ropes course here on campus, so students are getting to climb in the trees and learning how to communicate and strategize and accomplish a goal as a group during that adventure ropes activity. The Creations program has included a drama program where students are learning improv acting skills, character development, scene development. And then it's also included a digital art program where students are learning to do art on an iPad using different applications. They're also learning to use 3D pens and make amazing projects with those 3D pens. And finally, mountain biking, which has included an opportunity to obviously do a lot of biking, but also learn some bike repair skills and some trail maintenance skills as well. So thank you all so much for being here today. I'm going to turn the presentation back over to Katie, and hopefully we have some of our faculty and our headmaster, Bob Bruto, joining us now or soon.
Thanks, Emily. A lot to process, everyone, but hopefully that was a helpful overview of Landmark School. Again, feel free to start using that chat feature to throw out any questions. I'll introduce our panelists and have them greet you. And then for the next 10 minutes or so, we've got our elementary and middle school faculty and our headmaster to answer questions. And then at 9:40 or so, we'll shift gears and the questions will be directed to our student panelists. So think about both types of questions. I'll turn it over to our headmaster, Bob Bruto, to offer a greeting.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you, Emily. You covered an awful lot of ground there, so we appreciate that. It's nice to virtually meet you all. How I wish we were in our conference room meeting face-to-face, which we often do during these types of visits, but that will happen again. And welcome to the discussion about Landmark. For us, it's exciting here this year. We are in our 50th year as a school, so there's anniversaries there. And in full disclosure, I've been with Landmark for 50 years since the day we opened. So it's been exciting to see the evolution and to be holding on to a mission that says we will work with kids with language-based learning disabilities. We will understand their neuroscience and how they learn. We'll design programs for every one of them and make it individualized and customized and remedial. And to see the growth of these kids is absolutely phenomenal. And that's why so many people, I think, have been at Landmark for a long time. So even this year, when we had to close down at the end of last year and then we opened on campus, to see the kids on the elementary middle school campus jump out of their cars with their backpacks on, to see the high school kids jumping out of their cars, so excited to be back. We all got emotional. It was overwhelming. And it's exciting for them because I think the kids feel like this school meets them where they are, gets to know them, gives them support, allows them to ask questions and be self-advocates, and they don't feel different. It levels the playing field here in terms of who they are. So it's an exciting place to be. I'll be here to answer any questions. And in the future, if there's ever a question you have and you want to call me directly, email me directly, please feel free anytime, wide open. So thank you, Katie.
Thanks for being here, Bob. Next, I'd like to introduce the head of the elementary middle school, Claire Sullivan, to say hello.
Good morning, everyone. It's so nice to be able to meet you in this format. We wish we could be on campus showing you around, but this is a wonderful substitution for that, and we look forward to answering any of your questions. And I'm sure they've already noted, I'm very excited for you to see the student panel, because I think that's a really special part of these info sessions, when you get to hear directly from our students and ask them those questions about what your student may experience. So I look forward to speaking with you all soon.
Thanks, Claire. I believe Deb Blanchard is on the line. Can you say hello?
Hi, everyone. My name's Debbie Blanchard. I'm the academic dean at this campus. So my primary focus is all things academic, scheduling, curriculum, teacher training, and that kind of thing. So like Bob, I've been here a long time. I think I'm on 43 years, something like that. So it's a wonderful place to be, and I look forward to meeting you. Thanks.
Debbie, there's some great academic questions that have already come in, so we're circling back with you very soon.
Perfect. I'm monitoring the chat as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Megan Siebens, can you say hi?
Hi, I'm Megan Siebens. I work closely with Debbie as the reading supervisor and the testing coordinator. So anything to do with tutorial, reading, and all those assessments that the students get.
Thanks for joining us. Kirk, I think I saw you. Kirk Swanson.
Yes, thanks, Katie. Hi, everybody. My name is Kirk Swanson. I'm the Dean of Students here at Landmark Elementary Middle School. So glad to see you virtually. I wish we could see you in person, but maybe that will be soon. I'm really involved with student life, taking care of the students. We do have an assistant dean of students, Tara Jolie Lauermilk, who might be present as well. There she is. So we're very concerned with student life, and I do work with the teachers. I do supervise lunches and recess and communicate with parents. So I get involved with a lot of things going on, but I too have been here a number of years. I think might be, well, I started in 1981, so you guys can figure the math out. So I've been around a while, but it's a great place to be. Like Deb Blanchard said, we look forward to having you here. And thanks for coming today. Thanks, Katie.
Thank you so much. Tara, who coordinated our student panelists.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everyone. As Kirk mentioned, I'm Tara Jolie Laudermilk, the Assistant Dean of Students, and I also help coordinate. We have a middle school athletic program, so I work with our students in that capacity, and I work with all of our students in terms of student life, community building, just a way to stay connected with peers, not just in classes, but also during their free time, as well as after school.
Thank you so much. So that's our panelists. We're really lucky to have everyone on the call today and a whole huge range of experience. So keep the great questions coming. Deb, let's start with the first one that came about how we're supporting executive function and learning. Do you mind tackling that?
Sure. It's a tough question in some ways because it permeates our whole program. So much of what we do in every department is connected to the students' executive function. As you may surmise, many of our students have difficulties with executive function. It tends to be one of the challenges for most of our students. So we think of it in terms of organizing their time, their space, their materials, and most importantly, organizing information. So in each class, we have very explicit things that we would do to support kids with executive function difficulties. So at the lowest levels, the young kids, we have consistent binder systems that we use in every class. We have consistent routines about where to put homework that's to be done, where to put homework that's completed. We have color-coded agendas on the board in elementary so that students get a sense of routine. A lot of it is consistency, predictability, and the same approach from class to class. So the social studies teacher has the same systems as the language arts teacher, for example. And then this all carries into middle school. We have consistent routines such as we have a school-wide assignment notebook that all students use. They all use the same system. Sounds minor, but those kind of systems help in a big way. But most of it is teacher training on awareness of this and having it in the forefront of everyone's mind that this is an area of difficulty for most kids. So that's a quick answer. I could go on for days on this topic, so I'll stop there.
Nice overview. Thank you. Claire, there was a question about what happens when a student doesn't understand their homework, if the parents should jump in or how they navigate that piece. Could you speak to that?
Absolutely. Our homework is really unique compared to other academic institutions that your student may be coming from. We really use it as a diagnostic piece. So we like the students to be able to complete it independently. That's our ultimate goal. So what we advise parents, especially when they first start, they're oftentimes used to helping their students. But really on most assignments, it should be just a review of the work that the student is capable of doing. That's our ultimate goal. So if a student is unable to complete an assignment, that's really good data for us, the teachers and the tutors to know. So we recommend parents reaching out to the academic advisor, particularly at first, just let them know, so-and-so had difficulty with math or didn't understand language arts. And then ultimately, we really want the student to learn those self-advocacy skills. So that's where that comes into play. And we encourage the student to reach out directly to the teacher. There's time we have what's called milk break. I believe they've gone over that before, but that's time to touch in base with your teacher at the lunch break or just in class. Our teachers build that into their lesson plans to make sure that they're able to help students with difficulties with that. But that's kind of like the long answer. So we try to say to parents, no, don't help with students. It really is great data for us on our end the next day.
Thank you. Emily, there were a couple quick admissions questions that I figured we could address quickly. So one is about kind of the process, and I think if you can stay on after the students finish their Q&A, then Emily and I can talk through a little bit more what to expect for next steps. But Emily, could you speak to the question about central auditory processing disorder?
Yes, absolutely. We do have students that are diagnosed with a central auditory processing disorder enrolled. We would look very carefully at the auditory processing evaluation that you've had done as part of the admission process. We'll look at that information to ensure that the auditory processing difficulties are in the realm of phonological processing that our curriculum would be able to support. So that would be the particular lens that we would look at that information with in thinking about admission and thinking about whether or not our curriculum is the right fit.
Thanks, Emily. Tara, here's a question about students transferring in later into Landmark, thinking like 7th grade. I'm thinking about our panelists. I'm not sure if we have any voices that can speak to that, or if you want to touch on that.
Sure, I'd be happy to. We do have a panelist today who is joining us as an 8th grader. This is her first year, so she can definitely give her perspective of how it's been for her. But we do offer an orientation for students prior to coming to school, which gives them an opportunity to connect with other new students. I think a lot of times students think of a traditional school setting where they might be one new person in their class or their grade. Here at Landmark, we tend to have double digits of new students in a grade. So, we have anywhere between, 5, 10, sometimes more new students in the grade. So they're not the only new one, which tends to be a big thing for students. We know it's really important to make those social connections for students. So we do have opportunities for students to meet other new students prior to coming to Landmark, but also those first few days of school tend to be really critical in their connecting with other students. Sorry, I see students popping in, so I'm.
And we'll make sure we circle back to the students as well to hear from them firsthand. So I'll get to 1 or 2 more questions, and I'm going to turn it over to the students. Megan Stevens, I'm circling back to Gary's question about how we break down and schedule students. So his question is thinking about their specific needs in terms of their disability. Can you explain how we schedule for students?
Yeah, this is a great question because we're definitely a unique place in the way that we schedule. And we have a pretty homogeneous group of students. They all have language-based learning disabilities and come and feel like they have kids that are similar to them. But that is along a spectrum, of course. So we have kids that have varying levels of skills, and those don't always align. Some kids might have strengths in math and language arts is harder, or vice versa. So we really schedule every class individually based on student needs and where their strengths and weaknesses lie. So your student could be in a very high level math class, but need to be placed at a different level for language arts, our writing curriculum. So it's going to be based on what the student needs, and they're going to be grouped with students of similar skills for that subject specifically. The elementary is slightly different because they do have core classes, anything to do with language, LA, which is writing, oral expression, and then science, social studies all have kind of a language base. So those are grouped together, but math is grouped separately. So we still are able to individualize highly there.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to turn it over to the students, but really quick, I think the themes that I've missed that we'll make sure to circle back after we hear from our brave students is transition. So what happens when students leave the elementary middle school campus. Anxiety is a topic that's come up, and then circling back to the admissions process and what to expect. So Emily and I'll make sure, and any panelists who are able to stay on, we'll make sure we get to those questions. But in the meantime, we're so excited to turn it over to our brave students who are giving up their free time to come share their experiences. I want to start by introducing Kayla. And Kayla, I so vividly remember you attending this yourself around this time last year. So thank you for joining us now as an enrolled student. Kayla, can you say your name, where you're from, how long you've been at Landmark, and your grade?
Yeah, so hi, my name is Kayla. I am in the 8th grade. I've been at Landmark for 1 year, and I live in Borka.
Thank you, Kayla. We're glad you're here. Let's see, did I see Caroline? Yes, could you introduce yourself? Caroline, you might be muted.
Hi, I'm Caroline. I've been at Landmark for 2 years, and I'm from Westford, Massachusetts.
What grade are you in, Caroline?
I'm in 5th.
Great. Thank you for joining us. I haven't seen Cole yet, but is that all the students we have on the line, Tara, so far?
I think I've had 3 kids blame their mothers for not having anything this week.
All right, let's see. So let's transition to questions for the students. So please feel free to populate that chat with any questions for our brave panelists. And I think a few more students might be coming in. We'll introduce them. We'll catch them when they get here. But for now, we have Kayla and Caroline to speak to your questions. Here they come, guys. Okay. Kayla, let's start with you. This was, how was it transferring into Landmark as an 8th grader coming in?
So my transitioning is good. I met new friends like right away when I met them. All the teachers were really nice the first day I was there, and I just felt really comfortable when I first came.
Great. Caroline, how about you? How was it to start at Landmark when you first began?
It was scary at first, but everyone was really welcoming and kind, and so you kind of felt like it was fine to be here and you'd meet all these new friends right away.
Caroline, did you do the summer program? No, just jumped in. Great. Caroline, I'm going to stay with you. What's your favorite thing about Landmark? What makes it special to you?
I think that it's really nice because we have this thing called an elective that we get to like do all these things that you wouldn't really do at like a normal elementary or middle school, like bike repair and mixed media and stuff like that.
What's been your favorite elective so far?
Okay, I'm trying to remember this.
You're doing great.
Probably art or small engines.
Great, thank you. Kayla, what's your favorite part of Landmark?
What I like about Landmark is like the teachers and how they teach. I really like the one-to-one tutorial because then you can really work with a teacher one at a time. You don't have to like catch up on anything because they just like, it's really easy to learn.
So building off of that answer, what makes it different from the last school you were at?
So what my school did is that like there was a program at other school, but it was not as like different. It was just like they were taking their time, but it was just they went a little too fast. But at this school, they take as much time as you need to.
Great. Caroline, I'm going to ask you a similar question. What do you think are the most helpful things that your teachers do with you to make sure that you're succeeding and learning?
That they're not like going very fast, and they're not being mean. They're being very kind and slowing down if someone needs help with something, and being understanding if you don't know what something means or how to do something.
What do you think the biggest difference is from your last school experience?
From my last school, it kind of felt weird because it'd be in one big space with like 25 other students, and they would go really quickly, and then you'd have to be pulled out at like a ton of really fun things just to go do like one-on-one with someone.
Yeah, so at Landmark, everybody has the tutorial, right? You don't have to miss anything. Yeah, that's pretty nice. You guys are getting lots of compliments, by the way. You're doing such a nice job. All right, families, what else would you like to hear from the girls? A question that hasn't come up that usually does is about the commute. So maybe I'll ask Kayla, how long is your drive from Billerica?
So with traffic, it takes about 45 minutes, but if there isn't traffic, it takes like 35 or 40 minutes.
How do you get to school? Do you carpool?
My mom drives me.
All right. Let's see, other questions. You guys had missed, but questions that families had asked before you came in were about homework and wondering if students were able to do homework on their own or if homework felt manageable. Kayla, could you speak to that?
Yeah, so homework is now starting here, but like what they're doing now is you get homework and then you have like, I think you have like a few like days to do it, but first they're starting in like tutorial and they're just doing it step by step, doing all the other classes.
Could you give an example of something you've done for homework so families can get a sense of what you're doing in tutorial?
So for now in my tutorial, I am doing reading. I'm reading a book and then I'm giving a little summary and then I do like my feelings, what words I got mixed up and what my opinion or my feeling is.
Great. And Caroline, what about you? Do you remember what homework was like more maybe thinking about last year?
Well, for homework, they would never give you anything that you can't do, and it's usually a review so that you wouldn't be like at like right after dinner and be like, I can't do this, it's too hard, and like trying to get your teacher to help you and stuff. So it'd be like something you'd already know and something you're good at. They wouldn't give you something that you've never done before and looks like totally crazy.
Nothing totally crazy. I like that. Really good answer. A question that typically comes up, guys, is if you're able to stay in touch with your friends from your previous schools. So Kayla, just being a new student, are you still in contact with friends from your hometown?
Yes, I am. I'm keeping in touch with a lot of my friends. I have a group chat with some of my friends that I go to. I hang out with some of my friends. I do dance, so I get to see some of my friends from dance that I used to go to that school with. So I'm really keeping contact with them, and we always like try to find time so we can hang out.
Nice. And Caroline, what about you? Do you feel like you spend more time with Landmark friends or friends from your town?
Kind of even, because Landmark, you kind of see the people that you've seen at school for like this year and some of last year. But when you're, but you'll still like see your friends you've seen from your old town. Like I'm a Girl Scout and I see everyone, all of my friends in that like once every 3 months or something. And I know it seems like you won't see each other for a while because of this all wearing masks and social distancing thing, but you can still keep contact with like Zooms, and if you don't have a phone to chat, you could always write letters to your friends, because that's what I'm doing with my pod A friend on the bus. I write her letters and then she writes me some back.
Oh, that's so nice. I bet she really likes getting those letters. Are you guys seeing your Landmark friends outside of school?
Well, I'm an hour away from school, so I don't usually see a lot of people, but her I see sort of at like town events and stuff, and she's also a Girl Scout, so I see her sometimes too. But everyone kind of at Landmark is kind of like spread out everywhere.
Yeah. Guys, this question, I'm surprised, it usually gets asked. How's the food at Landmark? What do you think, Kayla?
Well, I don't really get the food at the school because I always like to bring. So I don't really know how it tastes because I always have to bring.
So you have the option to bring, or you can have food. Yeah, good. I'm glad you brought that up. What about you, Caroline? Do you eat lunch at school in milk break?
Lunch at school is probably better than a lot of other schools. The most popular one of the most popular is breakfast, but we haven't been able to do that this year. But I know an exciting one that's happened for Pod A, that's coming up for Pod B, is for Thanksgiving. They always do a turkey dinner for all the students. And they don't do desserts here, but they do pie on Thanksgiving.
Exciting. Good. So the question about after school, and then we'll let you guys go in just a second. So Caroline, did you do any after school activities last year?
I don't do most after school activities, but I did do some that, like, I did, I think Laser Quest was the only one I actually did. But there are lots of fun activities you could do after school. Like, I know some of the girls in my class stay after for bingo. And I know last year they did a ton of, like, helping out a pet shelter and other fun things to help the community like that.
Great job, girls. Okay, I'm gonna let our two panelists head off to class. You guys, so brave, so articulate. Thank you for taking the time to share your experiences. The parents were very impressed. Nice job, girls. Enjoy the rest of your days. All right, and we'll get to some of those topics that we missed from earlier. So girls, feel free to log off. We're gonna keep talking to families about Landmark, but they really appreciated you. Okay, so one question that I know we didn't get to earlier was around anxiety and thinking about maybe what changes and how students are presenting once they've come to Landmark. Anyone on the panel feel like they want to tackle that question? I'm not sure who's best equipped to speak to that. I know you could all answer it.
Claire, did you want to?
I can start, and then if you want to jump in. Yeah, what's really amazing is that over the course of the first semester, like really by the first Parents' Day, which we just had, our greatest amount of feedback that we get from parents is just how they've seen such a shift in their child at home. Like those first couple weeks, they're just getting used to our program and making friends, and then by this point in October, early October, November, early November, mid-November, they see this drastic change, and they always note that they get their real child back, which is such an amazing sentiment for us to hear. They start to see just the real student that they used to have, and that the struggles in school have now kind of melted away, and that they're really able to engage with their peers and feeling successful academically and socially. And so obviously there's that transition period at the beginning, it's coming to a new school, but I don't know, I know Tara can add to this, like those first couple days, even weeks, you just start to see the anxiety levels really reside, and they really just feel, they know that they belong and that this is the right place for them. And that's a sentiment, like I said, that they express to us, or that we hear a lot of on Parents' Day. Tara, I don't know if you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, I would just echo exactly what you said, Claire. I think especially the first day and those first few weeks of school, students definitely start to recognize and understand that they're not the only ones. They're in an environment with peers that have similar learning challenges. So the things that a lot of times they might have school aversion to or be nervous about, they're actually at a place that's going to help them work on those skills. We obviously have a really strong counseling department as well, if students are really having a tough time, but we find that students once they get to Landmark and they start to learn, the lay of the land, they do a nice job just kind of getting back to class and feeling, like Claire said, like they belong.
Thank you guys. That was really great. I think the last one for our panelists, and then Emily and I can address all of the admissions related questions, but I think the only theme that I hadn't hit on is transitioning out of our EMS campus. So I think it would be great if we can speak to both, how families are supported in that process, and then we can touch about, I guess Emily and I could talk some about the 8th grade transition if families are interested in joining the high school. Who would like to speak to that topic?
I can speak to that a bit. The general idea is that we are transitioning out about 1/3 of our school every year. So that's what makes us, it's unique. It's a higher percentage that who leave every year. Part of it is just the 8th grade group is by nature of their age, they're all going to be transitioning out. And then we generally have a small group each year who are transitioning out just because they are able to be successful in a different environment. And, that's our goal, is to get kids to the point where they can transition out. So one of the key people in this process is the academic advisor. I know Emily had a slide on this, but that's one of your key people for guiding the transition. It's very individualized. A lot depends on the options and family choices of what you intend to do post Landmark. Some people are looking to go back to public school. Some people are looking to go to a different private school. Some people leave us to go board in high school. Many people go to Landmark High School. So it's very individualized. A lot depends, obviously, on the skill levels of your child, but then what you're looking to transition to. So it's it sounds a little trite, but it's a case-by-case answer. And the advisor plays a key role. And then we have another position, Carl Pulkkinen and 2 others, Joni McLaughlin and Sharon Musto, who are in the position of public school liaison and guidance and transition. So Carl helps people research other outlets or work with the public school if you're transitioning to that. Because when kids transition, we want it to be sort of a well-articulated plan and have steps in place to guarantee their success wherever they go. I mean, that's the ideal scenario. So.
Great, thank you guys. I think I hit on the themes that were coming in questions, with the exception of the nitty-gritty admissions process. Bob, anything thematically you feel like we've missed about Landmark, or any last words you'd like to leave families with as they consider Landmark for their child?
Thanks, Katie. I think in a short time we've covered a lot of ground, but I just want you to understand that we see the whole child. It's the social, emotional, academic learner. We see the whole child. So it's not just the academic piece that we're trying to remediate. It's developing that social, emotional side of the kids, making sure that they develop self-confidence, making sure they become self-advocates. So if a student leaves Landmark and they're on a skill level that's appropriate and right for their cognitive abilities, and they're confident self-advocates, we've done a good job. That's our goal. And it's a huge team in place to make sure that happens. Kids just don't get lost. The team that you see here is leading a team of hundreds of people who are working with these kids to make sure it grows like that. So thank you for being a part of it. And like I said before, if there's anything I can do or any questions you'd like me to answer in the future, please just reach out.
What a nice way to end. Thank you, Bob. Panelists, we so appreciate you taking the time out of the day to chat with our prospective families. Feel free to move along and get back to your important work with the students, and Emily and I can wrap up with families about the admissions process. Thank you, panelists.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, so it seems like the questions are really logistical at this point, so Emily and I can quickly try to fill you in on what to expect from the admissions process. So one question that has come up is whether or not we accept students mid-year. In a year that we have availability, we would certainly look at a student for mid-year placement. Unfortunately, school is fully at capacity, so the only applications that are being considered at this point are for the 5-week summer program or for the fall 21-22 school year. It is a rolling admissions process in that there's not a deadline. We do encourage you to try to get your application materials organized and into us as sooner rather than later. You can submit materials piecemeal. So, if you're still waiting for the first quarter report, things like that, it's fine to send the bulk of the application materials into us. It's certainly best to send everything digitally this year as we can process it a little bit quicker. Once the application is completed, how long does it take to find out if your child got in, as well as the question if we're meeting with children? Emily, do you want to speak to those two questions?
Yes, absolutely. So in terms of, just to circle back and provide an overview of the application process as a whole, the application process, as Katie mentioned, you can begin the process at any time. We do encourage applications to be submitted as early as possible, but truly you can get started on the process at any time. We're constantly reviewing applications. The application itself is available on the admissions section of our website. Right now, it's a modifiable PDF that you can download and get started on. And we are really encouraging submission by email of the application and supporting documents. And so as you submit the main application forms, you will hear back from us that we've received that main application, and your answers on the application will help us figure out what additional supporting documents we need to request from you. So you'll get a list from us of any additional documents that we need to create a complete file. And so as that information comes in, we will confirm with you, and we will confirm with you as soon as that file is considered complete. And at that point, it begins a formal review process with the admission team here. That process does take varying amounts of time depending on the time of year. Sometimes the review could be just a few weeks. At other times of year, and I would say typically ramping up mid-January on into the spring, that's our busiest time. So the review process can reach 4 to 6 weeks during that busiest time. That's just due to the volume of applications that we have, but also to the thoroughness of our process. We really carefully review all of the materials that you've submitted, and we also do follow-up conversations with individuals that you've given us permission to speak to as part of the process. So we follow up with evaluators or with therapists just to really get a sense of that full person, that full picture, the whole child, as Bob mentioned. And then we discuss as a team whether or not to move forward with the final step in our process. The final step in our process is an individual appointment, and this year the appointments are taking place virtually. So the virtual appointment will include a placement screening. A member of our team would be working with your child one-on-one in a Google Meet format similar to this, and that screening includes different assessments, formal and informal assessments that look at literacy skill levels, language processing, and some memory and vocabulary and perceptual reasoning tasks. And so it really gives us that up-to-date sense of their literacy skills and aspects of their learning profile. And then in addition to that screening, we also would just have a conversation with your child, our favorite part of the appointment, where we really get to just get to know your child better, but also talk with them about Landmark and introduce this idea of Landmark, what we're all about, sharing a lot of the information that we talked about today, but really gearing it towards helping them understand what we're all about, the students that come to Landmark, how our teaching can really meet them where they are and be the right fit for how they learn. And then we answer any questions that they have. And so that appointment would be the final step in the process, and typically we can give you an admission decision right on the day of that appointment. And this would be true if you're applying for both the summer program and the school year. We could very likely give you the decision for both the summer and school year at the same time. If you're just applying for the summer program, we may be able to just review the materials, call you up, and give you an admission decision without scheduling that virtual appointment. And then we would schedule a shorter screening at a later date to help us with updating skill levels and using that for class scheduling. Let's see, what did I?
Two things I wanted to add, Emily, to what you said. It is the same application for summer as it is for the school year. So it may seem like a lot for a 5-week summer program, but it does ensure that a student coming to our 5-week summer program is going to have an identical experience to one entering the fall in terms of being surrounded by kids who have a similar learning profile and similar needs. Another question that's been asked, I'm sorry, Sarah, if I missed it earlier, we're not accepting students to a specific grade, we're accepting them to the program. So we're enrolling students for all of elementary program, all of middle school program. That's determining our capacities rather than grade. And that goes back to the way we group students. Because students can be placed a grade up, a grade below, as Emily said, we don't have the limits on our grades per se.
But just to add, the capacities of the programs typically stay about the same from year to year. So that elementary program is 50 students and will stay about that same size. The middle school program is 115 students and will stay about that same size. And we had 23 new middle school students this year, and we accepted 25 new elementary students this year. So almost half of the program was new in elementary.
So I think we got to the questions in the chat. Thank you so much for dedicating so much of your morning to learn about Landmark. And this is just the beginning, so feel free to stay in touch with us with any specific questions. If you have questions about your child's learning profile and you'd like me to look at testing, you can reach out to me directly, katiechu@landmarkschool.org. And yeah, we're thrilled that you joined us this morning.
Thank you all so much. We really appreciate you being here. Take care.